So, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest webinar in Sony's Rewrite the Future program. Today's presentation is on the subject of taking live production to the next level, and it features Sony's SR Live for HDR workflow. My name is Peter Sykes, and I will present the slides today. I'm joined by my colleague, Norbert Paquet, who is Sony Professional's Head of Live Production Solutions Group. Hi, Norbert.
Hello, Peter. Hello. Good morning.
So Norbert is based in Paris, and we'll be looking out for your questions. And my name is Peter Sykes. I'm Strategic Technology Development Manager for Sony Professional, and I'm based in the UK. And Norbert will also be making additional comments where necessary during this presentation. Now, Norbert has lots of experience at some of the highest profile HDR live events, so it's fantastic that he's able to join me for this webinar today. So during the webinar, which will run for somewhere between, I guess, 30-35 minutes, you'll be able to ask questions during the session. And if you look on your GoToWebinar screen, you should see a Ask Questions box on the right-hand side of your screen. You can type in questions and we'll try to take them either during the presentation, or if they need a little bit more research, we'll endeavor to follow up with you after the event has finished. We also value your feedback on the webinar. Any suggestions that you have to improve the webinar, or any subjects that you'd like to see covered in future, please let us know. You'll see a short survey screen appear at the end of this webinar where you can request a follow-up from Sony. You can ask questions that maybe you didn't think about during the session. And it's a very short survey, only a couple of minutes. So please fill it in if you have the time. So today, our agenda will be as follows. We're going to look at, first of all, the benefits of producing content in high dynamic range in HDR, the main subject of today's webinar. We'll look at producing high dynamic range and standard dynamic range program feeds simultaneously in a live environment using a single production crew, and more importantly, a single workflow. We'll look at how to maintain creative intent from the outside broadcast truck at a stadium or in a studio all the way through to the home. And we'll look at some recent developments in our SR Live system to make the workflow even more powerful for the users who are enjoying SR Live around the world. For those of you who may be interested, last week we ran a webinar on the basics of HDR. So this looked at HDR concepts and terminology, industry standards and specifications, and Sony's unique family of products and solutions for high dynamic range. Now, if you didn't get a chance to look at the webinar, it's well worth taking a look. And you can watch it again via the pro.sony/rewrite web address. Or you should see in your screen a handout section. And we've created a small PDF with details of this and other webinars in the series that you may be interested in viewing. So please take a look in the handout section. You should be able to download the PDF, and it gives some interesting information about past and future webinars. So let's start by looking at high dynamic range and the business benefits of producing in HDR, because if there are no benefits, there's basically no reason to set up an HDR production. Well, with high dynamic range, there are benefits today and also benefits that can be derived for tomorrow. So starting with today, HDR enables images to really stand out in a very crowded media landscape. And this is very important for production companies and broadcasters because new services continue to appear, trying to attract the viewer's attention. So it's important that a media organization can compete on image quality. HDR puts the viewer at the heart of the action. And as we know, this is important, especially today, where sports fans are unable to watch games live in the stadium, and they're really relying on the broadcaster to put them at the heart of the action. There is also an opportunity with HDR to upsell. So SDR subscribers could be persuaded to pay a little bit more money for a 4K ultra high definition HDR service. And production companies and freelancers who are familiar with HDR techniques and have HDR capability can pitch for business for projects that are going to be produced in high dynamic range. In terms of benefits for tomorrow, high dynamic range programs are ready for future distribution opportunities, maybe new services that come on air or are being streamed in the near future. Archived high dynamic range content can be used for future projects or can be sold to third parties for use in their programs to again generate revenue from the content. So all great reasons for making the switch. So we're now going to look at what is SR Live for HDR. What is this system that Sony introduced a few years ago and is now being used around the world, and how it can be used for simultaneous live production of both high dynamic range and standard dynamic range images. Well, to start, SR Live stands for Scene Referred Live Production for HDR Applications. And those of you who watched the basics presentation last week will have heard about scene referred and display referred systems. So SR Live enables the capture, the processing, and the distribution of programs with an accurate representation of the image characteristics in the scene that's being shot. This is the fundamental design philosophy of a scene referred high dynamic range production system. At this point, I will mention that there is a white paper on SR Live for HDR, which is available for download via our website. And again, you can see details of this on the handout that you can download from your webinar screen. The white paper was released a few months ago, and it gives a very comprehensive overview of the basics of SR Live for HDR. So you may want to have a look at that after this presentation has been completed. So looking at SR Live in a little bit more detail, what is the proposition? Well, actually, the proposition for SR Live is very simple. Here's an overview of how the system works. So basically, the system is based on one truck or one studio configured for either hybrid log gamma, HLG, or Sony's S-Log3 transfer function for HDR operation. From the truck, we can derive simultaneously standard dynamic range and high dynamic range in either PQ or hybrid log gamma for delivery to home. And the picture quality that we create ensures that we have happy viewers, whether they're watching at home or on a mobile device on the move. This is all achieved while keeping usual operational practices in the truck from the high definition standard dynamic range world, using industry standard formats for delivery. That means ITU recommendation BT2100 for high dynamic range in PQ or in HLG, and delivering images as seen in the truck to the viewers at home, and all whilst maintaining full artistic control from the production on site or in the studio to the home. So a very simple proposition. If we take a closer look at an SR Live workflow, let's start really at the end of the chain, because the first decision that a production crew will be making is what is the deliverable that has to be distributed to the viewers at home. Now, if you're a broadcaster, you will be deciding what the deliverable will be. If you're a production company, you'll probably be instructed by your client as to which feeds you have to distribute for forward delivery to the viewers. So you could be working to deliver a 4K Ultra HD feed in high dynamic range in PQ or in hybrid log gamma in accordance with BT 2100. You could be delivering a 4K standard dynamic range feed or a high definition standard dynamic range feed, or a combination of a number of these delivery formats. The deliverable will lead you to decide which production system to set up at the heart of the system around the switcher. That could be 4K, Ultra HD, or it could be high definition. And in HDR, it could be hybrid log gamma or Sony's S-Log3 transfer function. Now you'll immediately see that in some cases you'll need to convert from the production core, the production format, to the delivery format. And Sony has a fantastic conversion product, which we'll look at in a little bit, a few slides later on, which is called HDRC 4000, a high dynamic range converter, which can make the conversions necessary to feed the viewers at home. Now at the input to the switcher, there will be a number of sources. We could have camera systems which are working in exactly the same format as at the production core. In this case, either 4K or high definition in HLG or in S-Log3. And in that case, no conversion is required at the input to the switcher. Or we could have cases where we do need to convert. So we could have graphics or live feeds or server replays that may require their transfer function, their OETF, or their resolution, or their color space to be converted. And this is where the HDRC 4000 converter comes into play again. So you can see that there is a very simple, a very effective workflow with conversion at either the input or the output of the switcher. And this is the fundamental design principle of the SR Live system. So in terms of the benefits of the system for live production, the first benefit we have is this simultaneous production of HDR and SDR images. And here we can see the position of the HDRC 4000 high dynamic range converter in the program chain. This can create the PQ or the hybrid log gamma delivery formats for distribution to the viewers at home. A second benefit of the system is that the camera operators, the shaders, can work in exactly the same way as they have been used to in the SDR high definition world. They've been working on for 10 years or more. So the operators can shade using trusted SDR techniques with SDR monitors, SDR waveform monitoring, and this is facilitated by an SDR gain offset that can be used for this purpose within the system. This is a big benefit for the production crew, as they don't need to relearn all the techniques that they've been using in the past. A third benefit is that the SDR images that are derived from the HDRC 4000 high dynamic range program feed have the equivalent quality to those that are experienced by the camera shaders who are looking at the SDR images in the truck. So we deliver images as seen to the viewers at home, and we maintain that creative intent in SDR. A fourth benefit is that we maintain the creative intent and that as seen performance when also working in high dynamic range. So the HDR images that are signed off by the vision supervisor are again delivered to the home as seen in the production truck. So although the system works on a very simple principle, the benefits are very, very powerful, meeting many requirements for successful distribution and production of HDR and SDR images. The HDRC 4000 is the key component within the system, and we can see an image of the device here. It's a very powerful converter that can convert almost any input to any output, and it can be located before or after the production switcher. It's been used for some of the highest profile events in recent years and can support resolution, color space, and dynamic range in all of the transfer functions, resolutions, and ranges and colors that we need within our system. It can support 12G and 6G SDI. It can support 2 channels of 4K or 8 channels of high definition per converter. And it can also be switched to a mode called display referred mode. We mentioned scene referred operation earlier in this presentation, and in the basics presentation from last week, we looked in a little bit of detail about display referred performance. So let's move on now and take a look at the options available within the SR Live system for adjusting the look of the picture. And we'll also take a look in a few slides' time at the new SR Live metadata system. Before talking about the looks available in SR Live, this slide will build to explain a little bit more about what is meant by a picture look. So all TV formats have their own look, and the look implies a color saturation and an image tone. There are 2 types of look that we're going to consider in this slide. The first is what is known as a traditional look, as used in standard dynamic range video, and in what Sony refers to as the HLG Live and the S-Log3 Live operating mode. Here, the OOTF gamma is applied to R, G, and B components independently. And this has the effect of increasing the saturation of the displayed image. The second look we're discussing on this slide is called the natural look, and this is used in hybrid log gamma as per ITU recommendation BT2100. Here, the OOTF gamma is applied to the luminance component only, and the saturation of the image matches that of the scene being shot. Here's the information represented in a table. The OETFs that can be selected for production are shown across the top row, a choice of hybrid log gamma or S-Log3. The second row, called HDR look, shows the options available in the camera's CCU related to the selection of picture look. 3 options are available when working in hybrid log gamma: a live or mild traditional look, where gamma is applied to RGB, and a natural look, where gamma is applied to luminance. Note that HLG Live exhibits an original look of S-log3, and the new HLG mild setting exhibits a milder look of S-log3. For HLG Natural, the look is that of ITU recommendation BT 2100. A live and a new mild look can also be applied when working in S-log3, and both exhibit a traditional look with gamma applied to RGB. And the bottom row of the chart shows the picture monitor settings in a Sony monitor when operating in the hybrid log gamma or S-log3 mode. Here's a representation that represents a traditional live and mild look on the left and a natural look on the right. Each consists of an image called Three Sisters, captured with a Sony Venice camera, and graphic elements of 6 flags from around the world. And we thank Director of Photography Jeff Berlin for kindly providing the Three Sisters image. You may notice the difference between the more natural look on the right compared with the more saturated, higher contrast traditional images on the left, especially for the live look with its higher contrast and more saturated image that has a closer look to that of existing standard dynamic range images that also exhibit the traditional look. So we have creative control of the picture look, and the next subject to consider are the options that are available for conversion from standard dynamic range to high dynamic range and vice versa within the program chain. And once again, there are a number of options. The first is the display referred or display light conversion. A display referred conversion aims to maintain the original look of a piece of content when it is converted to a new format. Graded content and graphics will appear in the new format as the colorist intended when grading the original picture. However, this should not be used when matching cameras. The second option is a scene referred or a scene light conversion. This is good for matching the look of SDR and S-log3 cameras to HLG high dynamic range cameras. Scene referred conversion should not be used for graded or archived SDR content with HLG natural, i.e. gamma on luminance, as it will change the look and the artistic intent. And as you can see in this caption here, caution is required when converting to avoid unwanted side effects, as we will see on the next slide. So let's consider an original SDR image that is being used within an HDR production scenario. This SDR image must be converted to HDR, in this case to hybrid log gamma for production. An SDR feed then has to be created from the HDR program to supply the viewers that are watching on SDR screens. And this SDR to HDR to SDR process is referred to as a round trip. The SDR image at the top labeled reference, the SDR image at the top, if I point it out here, is labeled reference SDR BT709. Bottom left is an example where a scene referred SDR to HLG conversion has been combined with a display-referred HDR to SDR conversion. Notice the lack of saturation of the derived SDR image after the round trip when compared with the SDR original. Bottom right shows the opposite case, where a display-referred SDR to HLG conversion has been combined with a scene-referred HDR to SDR conversion. Notice the oversaturation of the derived SDR image when compared with the SDR original. So what is Sony's recommendation? Sony recommends the use of scene-referred conversion combined with an HDR look set to mild. This is represented in this slide, where an HDR production is using the HLG OETF combined with the mild look. Scene-referred conversions are used both at the input of the switcher to convert from SDR to HDR, and after the switcher to derive the SDR feed to the from the HDR program output. Working in this way maintains the same look for the SDR delivery as the original SDR source images. And that's very important for satisfying the many viewers who will continue to watch the output in standard dynamic range. Here you can see the result, a very good match between the original SDR image and the image when converting from HLG mild on the left, or completing a round trip from SDR to HDR mild here on the right. A good match in each case. So to summarize, Sony recommends SR conversion, scene-referred conversion, with HDR look equals mild. And you can take a look at the SR Live white paper that I mentioned earlier for more information. We'll now look at another new development in the SR Live system, SR Live metadata, which was announced recently. SR Live metadata is based on an SR Live metadata packet that stores a number of parameters that describe the creative decisions and camera adjustments defined by the operators during production. The metadata packet reacts in real time, capturing parameter values as camera adjustments are made. The packet is embedded in the SDI signal here, and can also be recorded in files, making signal feeds and files self-explanatory at each stage of production. SR Live metadata can be read by the HDRC 4000 to indicate the exact conditions of the cameras during shooting. And this enables an exact duplication of the SDR program from the HDR production layer here. SR Live metadata can also be created by camcorders such as the PXW Z750, the Z450, and the X500. And this can be useful if the cameras are shooting, for example, at a motorsport event in the pit lane. The SR Live metadata can be read by Sony's Catalyst Prepare system to derive an SDR output from the HDR camcorder content in an equivalent quality to that created using an HDR C4000 here. Here's the detail. So we'll build up a picture of HDR being converted by Sony's Catalyst system. So in the early days, the adjustments provided for conversion of HDR to SDR were limited. In 2017, we had an SDR gain adjustment where the SDR derived image is represented here. Later in 2019, we added SDR gain, knee adjustments, and black adjustments for a more accurate reproduction of the SDR image when converting from the HDR of the camcorders. And at the end of November, early December, Sony will launch a future version of Catalyst Prepare, which will be able to make full use of the SR Live metadata packet for a better reproduction of the SDR image from the HDR input to Catalyst. This compares very well with the SDR image, which is derived live from the HDR live camera feeds, as we can see on the right side of the image here. So an almost immediate benefit of using the SR Live metadata system within a post-production environment, which is using Sony's Catalyst system. For future operations, this slide shows a complete SR Live metadata ecosystem where production information travels over streaming interfaces and is stored within files for post-production and archiving applications. Another new development is the introduction of a new HDR processing engine. This has been developed as an FPGA core with similar processing algorithms to the HDR C4000 converter. This HDR processing engine can be embedded within professional products, including SDI to IP converters, video switches, and professional monitors, and it provides greater flexibility within the program chain. And as we reach the final slides of this webinar, this is an example of SR Live working in a system using a higher resolution than 4K. This is a case where a Sony 8K camera operating in SR Live mode was used to support the first ever live 8K sports broadcast in the UK by BT Sport. PWS 4500 live production servers, the HDR C4000 converters, and BVM HX 310 TriMaster HX master monitors were also used. And if you're interested in more details, check out the pro.sony.eu website, where you can see more details in a press release about this exercise. So in summary, producing in HDR provides benefits today and tomorrow. SR Live creates high dynamic range and SDR feeds simultaneously using a single workflow. Creative intent is maintained from the stadium to the home, and we have flexible control options for the look and the conversion method used throughout the workflow. And new developments are making SR Live even more powerful. This completes the formal part of today's webinar. So before we take questions, if you'd like more information, please complete the short survey at the end of this webinar, or check out our upcoming program of webinars on the handout. You can see all the details also by logging into pro.sony/rewrite. So many thanks for listening. And let's now bring back Norbert, who has been monitoring for questions and may also have some more comments about the webinar itself.
Thank you, Peter. I think you were exceptionally clear as there is no question from our audience coming. I think I'd like to reinforce the main goal of that workflow to simplify and make it efficient for delivering SDR and HDR contents. Although some aspects individually looks complicated, the reality is that, as you say, through the multiple operational testings and scenarios we have implemented over the last few years, Salive has proven to be the choice for many production companies and broadcasters as their production workflow for their current HDR and of course SDR delivery. So I really recommend people to download the material which is attached to this webinar. They will gain access to the white paper, which is really well made and complements very well what you explained. So if there is no more question, I encourage again our audience to download the white paper and watch the other webinars that can look at the multiple aspects of HDR. And we will be happy to help you if you want to implement HDR workflows into your production in the future.
Okay, thank
Peter,
you, Norbert.
Closing words.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Norbert. Very important points. And I think it just falls to me to thank everybody for joining the webinar. We have a very good attendance today, and we know that people are joining from various parts around the world. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us today. Please fill out the survey. Have an enjoyable rest of the day. Keep safe, and we'll see you for the next webinar. Thank you.